guarantee that we're going to cut our carbon emissions in time. We've got a very, very long way to go, and we're not nearly moving fast enough. But here's a few things that give me hope compared to 12 or 14 years ago. First of all, there's tens of millions of climate activists who are now getting mobilized. And I'm truly inspired by the international school strikes. In 2018, Greta Thunberg was one student. In 2019, she mobilized 4 million people around the world in September. The second reason for hope is the commitments of Fortune 50, Fortune 500 global companies like Apple, like Walmart, to reduce or zero out their emissions as early as 2030. Third, there's the potential for really radical innovation to make clean energy more affordable. Cost is what really matters here. And whether it's better batteries or green hydrogen or low carbon cement, we have an enormous amount of work to do in innovation. Finally, there's, for me, awe-inspiring pressure from employees, shareholders, and investors. $29 trillion of investor capital is now committed to push corporations for sustainability. And all those give me hope. A few things. I knew this was a complicated topic, but I didn't, when I began the book, grasp the enormity of the challenge. So first of all, let's talk about speed. According to the United Nations, at the world's current rate of carbon emissions, we're going to cross the red line into irreversible climate damage in less than 7 years. They say the global carbon budget that we can spend or emit is 400 gigatons. So the clock is ticking. Then there's the scale of the problem. To reach to carbon net zero, which is the only way to control global warming, we can't just decarbonize the grid or electrify transportation or improve our food systems or any of the many other emissions cuts that are in our book. We're also going to literally have to remove carbon from the atmosphere and pump, the estimates are 5 billion tons of CO2 underground every year. 5 billion tons. That's the equivalent of running the entire global oil industry in reverse. So all in all, this is a bigger mobilization than what we had in World War II, when you'll remember the Allied factories stopped making cars and appliances to make 14,000 battleships and 286,000 airplanes. So it's the enormity of the challenge that really came home as I did the research for the book. It's pragmatic, and it's based on actions grounded in the current science. If we focus on just the things that matter, not the bright, shiny objects, but the essence of this plan, there are 10 truly global objectives by which we'll directly cut or remove carbon emissions, including how we electrify transportation, how we decarbonize the grid, how we feed 10 billion people, how we protect our forests and our oceans, how we clean up concrete and steel, essential materials, and then remove the stubborn carbon that's left in the atmosphere. So 10 big solutions, coupled with 4 accelerators, which can allow us to get this job done in time. We can't wait until 2060 to solve this problem. So if we enact the right policies, turn movements into action, if we innovate like crazy and invest like our lives depended on it, because they do, those distinguishing elements of this plan, that it's based on objectives and key results, or OKRs, gives me hope. For each of these 10 objectives, there's just a handful of key results that, if we achieve them, will meet the objective that's put forth. Those are the details, the specifics of speed and scale. Now, that's in the context of a planet that's been miserable in our response to the COVID crisis. And it's clear that the lessons of being science-based and having steady, consistent leadership and investing ahead of the problem are relevant to the climate crisis. But there's differences as well. The first principle here, I believe, is that in a global economy, global markets are going to push countries to pursue what's in their national self-interest. 2 points about that. The transition to the net zero economy is the greatest economic opportunity of the 21st century. In fact, there's 25 million new net jobs to be had this decade. And then the second powerful point, I believe, is that is the hard reality of the climate crisis. No country is going to solve this climate crisis by itself. We are going to swim or sink together. So what will it take to get India to commit to net zero? For India, clean energy is seen by the leadership, it's seen by the world as an opportunity to leapfrog dirty fossil fuels. And so what the developed world has got to do is make clean energy solutions more affordable for everyone. And by example, electric vehicles will be competitive in the US at $35,000, but in India, they must be $11,000 to compete with the internal combustion engine, to overcome what Bill Gates calls the green premium. At the grid level in India, they've declared a national mission to become a global leader in solar energy. But to do so, they're going to need substantial financing from wealthier countries, namely the US and China and members of the European Union. Now, Russia is an entirely different story. So the question becomes, what can push Russia into solar and into wind? And here I think the most powerful lever is going to be the market. A global price on carbon or carbon border tariffs adjustments could force Russia to reassess its energy policy. But even without a carbon price, Russia is swimming against the renewable energy tides. There's another petrostate that recently took a different course. That's Saudi Arabia. You know, despite their huge oil reserves, they're hedging their bets by launching one of the world's biggest solar programs. The Saudis have done the math. They know that the countries that don't embrace a clean energy future are going to lose out. As a father, I can assure you, Mary will not be satisfied by the book. And for very good reason. And that's because we've got a long way to go. You know, this action plan contains 10 objectives, big, hairy-ass goals. And each one is supported by a handful of key results, each of which is essential to getting us to net zero. So the action that I'm looking for, that Mary's looking for, that we want the world to look for, is to measure our success based on these key results. And we're going to be tracking those at this website, speedandscale.com. I invite you to join us on this crusade. Join us there, because this is humanity's greatest challenge. And we are very fast running out of time. We need to activate leaders from all walks of life to move others to act before it's too late. And that means that we need the leader inside of you, inside of everyone in your audience. Here's one thing I've learned over my career from Andy Grove. When teams set truly audacious goals with a plan to meet them, the results can surpass all expectations. We have a plan, an action plan, and it's focused on the 10 big objectives we need to get to net zero. We're going to go for the gigatons. 6 of our 10 objectives directly cut or remove carbon emissions. Those are how we electrify transportation, decarbonize the grid, feed 10 billion people, protect our forests and our oceans, clean up concrete and steel, and remove the stubborn carbon that's left in the atmosphere. Then because we have to do this in time, there are 4 accelerators to get the job done. We need to enact the right policies, turn movements into action, innovate like crazy, and invest like our lives depended on it, because they do. What sets our plans apart is that this has been built on objectives and key results, or OKRs, Andy Grove's proven goal-setting system. Each of these 10 objectives is supported by a handful of measurable key results, so we can show exactly how we're going to achieve them. We began with the science, the bewildering array of reports, and said we want to be grounded in that, but then reach out to leaders in the field. We conducted over 100 interviews, gathered 1,000 different data points, which we verified. There's 500 research footnotes in the back of the book. And we came to the conclusion that we didn't need another book on climate. And also, we didn't need to inspire people for individual actions. Those are necessary and expected. We targeted the book at the leader inside of each of us. That's the part of us that can move others to act. Because where we are in this crisis is we urgently need action now. This is the decisive decade. So with interviews, with research, we then said, let's apply a proven framework for achieving audacious goals, these objectives and key results. And rather than let the case rest simply with a precise but dry recital of what must be done, let's enliven the book with stories from entrepreneurs, from activists, from youth, from policymakers, both their struggles and their successes. And so, honestly, I cheated a little bit. I'm an engineer and I have a hard time with words. So literally 1/2 to 2/3 of the book are the words of Jeff Bezos and Mary Barra and John Kerry. And I think those stories are what's memorable, and they make this all important agenda come to life. My dream is that we'll come out into the world right at the time of COP, and we can use this as a framework to judge how far the nations have gone in their commitments, and then importantly, hold them to these actions.